The first time it happened, Anna barely noticed. She stepped out of the shower, her skin still damp, wrapped a towel around herself, and reached for the mirror with one hand. The glass was fogged, beads of condensation clinging to its surface. She wiped a clear space with the edge of her palm and leaned closer to examine her reflection. Her dark hair dripped water onto her shoulders, her tired eyes staring back at her. That was when she saw it. A handprint. It was faint at first, just the outline of fingers, barely visible against the fogged mirror. Anna frowned, confused. Had she touched the mirror earlier? Maybe before she stepped into the shower. She didn't remember doing so, but she shrugged it off. The warmth of the water had made her drowsy, and she had other things on her mind. She grabbed her toothbrush, pushing the strange mark to the back of her thoughts. By the time she finished brushing, the mirror had almost completely cleared. The handprint was gone. Anna didn't think about it again until the next morning. When she stepped into the bathroom, a chill ran through her. There, on the mirror, was another handprint. It was in the same place as before, but this time it was clearer, more distinct. The fingers pressed firmly against the glass, as if someone had stood right in front of the mirror and left their mark. She hesitated, her pulse quickening. It didn't make sense. She had cleaned the mirror the night before. There shouldn't be anything on it. Anna ran a towel over the glass, erasing the print. Then, after a moment of hesitation, she pressed her own palm against the surface, comparing the sizes. Her hand was smaller. The print on the mirror was larger, the fingers longer. A shiver ran down her spine. Maybe it was just some residue from cleaning products. Or maybe, she laughed softly to herself, she had a ghostly admirer. Still, as she turned away, a strange feeling settled in her stomach. She didn't like the way the print had been waiting for her. Days passed, and Anna tried to push the strange occurrences out of her mind. But each time she stepped out of the shower, the handprint returned. It didn't matter how many times she cleaned the mirror. It didn't matter if she scrubbed it down before stepping into the shower or wiped it dry before leaving. Every time she came back, the mark was there. And then, after a week, something changed. The print got bigger. At first, she thought she was imagining it. Maybe it just looked that way because she was starting to focus on it too much. But as the days passed, there was no denying it. The handprint was growing. The fingers stretched longer, the palm broader. It wasn't just some strange quirk of the bathroom mirror anymore. It was something else, something unnatural. Anna began to feel uneasy in her own home. She found herself avoiding the bathroom mirror, turning her back quickly after each shower. The feeling of being watched started to creep into her daily routine. She would wake up at night, convinced there was something standing in the corner of her room, just out of sight. One evening, she decided to document it. She took a picture of the mirror before her shower, then another immediately after. The difference was undeniable. The handprint had appeared again, larger, darker, more pronounced. It was as if something was pressing harder against the glass. A sense of dread settled deep in her bones. It wasn't just a smudge, it wasn't a trick of the light. Something was leaving that mark, and it was getting closer. Anna couldn't ignore it anymore. The handprint wasn't just some lingering moisture on the glass. It wasn't a trick of the steam. It was real, and it was changing. She tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe there was something wrong with the mirror itself, some kind of defect in the glass or a reaction to temperature changes. But deep down, she knew that wasn't the answer. Mirrors didn't grow handprints. They didn't make them larger larger over time. One evening, determined to put an end to the madness, she took down the mirror entirely. She lifted it from its place on the wall, hesitating only briefly before carrying it to the hallway closet. If the mirror was gone, the print couldn't come back. But when she returned to the bathroom the next morning, she felt her breath catch in her throat. The print was still there, not on the missing mirror, but on the empty wall where it had been. A smudged, ghostly outline of fingers splayed across the bare paint. Anna stumbled back, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. This was impossible. She forced herself to take slow breaths, gripping the doorframe for support. Then, shakily, she stepped forward and raised a trembling hand. She pressed her fingers against the wall, right over the print. The texture of the paint was dry beneath her fingertips. And once again, she saw the undeniable truth. The handprint was bigger than hers. Something was leaving it behind. A wave of nausea swept through her, and she turned away, stumbling out of the bathroom and slamming the door behind her. For hours, she sat on her bed, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of it. It had to be some kind of prank. Someone sneaking into her apartment, marking the mirror every night while she slept. But that didn't make sense. She always locked her doors. No one had a spare key. She considered calling a friend, but what would she say? That she was afraid of a handprint number. She needed proof. That night she set up her phone on the bathroom counter, angling it to capture the mirror. If something or someone was touching the glass, she would see it. She turned off the light and went to bed, the weight of fear pressing against her chest like a stone. Morning came too soon, and Anna hesitated before retrieving her phone. She unlocked the screen, fingers clammy, and pressed play on the recording. The video showed nothing at first, just the dimly lit bathroom, still and silent. The mirror reflected only darkness. Hours passed in fast forward, the timestamp in the corner crawling toward dawn. Then, just before sunrise, the change happened. The mirror's surface rippled. Anna's breath hitched. It was subtle at first, just a flicker, like a heat wave distorting the glass. But then the center of the mirror darkened, as if something was pressing against the other side. A handprint formed slowly from the inside. She dropped the phone, her stomach twisting in horror. It wasn't on the surface. Something was pressing against the mirror from the other side. Anna scrambled backward, her breaths coming in shallow gasps. Her eyes darted to the empty spot on the wall where the mirror had been. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. It wasn't the mirror itself. It was something beyond it. For the first time in days, Anna considered leaving, packing a bag, calling someone, getting out. But she hesitated. She had lived in this apartment for years. She had nowhere else to go. And what if leaving wouldn't stop it? The fear lingered all day, curling around her like a fog. She avoided the bathroom, ignoring the tightness in her chest every time she walked past the closed door. But that night, she made a decision. She wouldn't run. She would face it. So, just before midnight, she carried the mirror back into the bathroom. She placed it against the wall, its surface dull and empty. Then, swallowing her terror, she stepped into the shower. The water scalded her skin, but she barely noticed. Her mind was on the mirror, on what might be happening just beyond the veil of steam. She forced herself to stay in the shower longer than usual, waiting, listening. When she finally turned off the water and stepped onto the mat, she didn't wipe the mirror. She waited. The steam curled around her, clinging to the glass. Slowly, Shapes began to form, misty, uncertain, and then, as if emerging from deep water, the handprint appeared. But this time, it wasn't alone. There were two, side by side, and they were larger than ever before. Anna staggered backward, a whimper catching in her throat. The prints weren't just bigger, they were stronger, deeper, as if whatever was making them was getting closer, pushing harder. Trembling, she lifted a shaking hand and reached toward the glass. As soon as her fingertips brushed the surface, a sound filled the room. A whisper, low and distant, like something calling from far away. Anna turned and fled. She didn't sleep that night. Every shadow in her apartment felt wrong, every sound too sharp. She sat curled on the couch, her arms wrapped around her knees. The image of the handprints burned into her mind. The next morning, she resolved to get rid of the mirror for good. She carried it down to the dumpster behind her building, not caring how ridiculous she looked, hauling a full-length mirror across the parking lot in her pajamas. She tossed it in with a clang, then stood there for a long moment, breath unsteady. It was over, or so she thought. When she returned to her apartment and stepped into the bathroom, the mirror was still there, right where it had always been. And this time, the handprint was unmistakable, bigger than ever, darker, pressed so hard against the glass that the outline of nails could be seen. Anna let out a strangled cry and staggered away. She clutched the door frame, her body trembling. This wasn't just something haunting the mirror. It was something trying to get through. Anna couldn't move, her body locked in place, her breath shallow and ragged as she stared at the mirror. The handprint had changed. The fingers were longer now, the spaces between them stretched unnaturally wide. And there, at the tips, dark imprints of something sharp. Claws. It wasn't just pressing against the glass anymore. It was trying to break through. A cold wave of terror crashed over her, and she stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the bath mat. She had to get out, had to run, but as she turned toward the door, something shifted in the room. The air grew heavy, thick. The temperature dropped so suddenly that her breath bloomed in front of her, the steam from the shower twisting unnaturally in the frigid air. Then the sound came, a crack, like ice breaking under pressure. Anna turned, her stomach twisting into a painful knot. The mirror had splintered. A single, jagged fracture ran through the center of the glass, splitting the handprint down the middle. And beneath it, deep within the reflection, something moved. Not her. Not her reflection. Something else. The darkness in the mirror swirled like ink, dropped into water, shifting, expanding. A shape formed in the glass. A shadowed figure, its features indistinct, its form unnatural. And then, it moved, not like a reflection, like something inside the mirror, like something pushing closer. Anna let out a strangled gasp and lunged for the door. Her fingers barely brushed the handle before the light in the bathroom flickered. The entire room dimmed as if something had sucked the energy from the air, leaving only a hollow, suffocating silence. The crack in the mirror widened with a sickening creak. Another handprint appeared beside the first, and then another, and another, more and more, pressing against the glass, pushing, stretching. Too many fingers, too many hands. The mirror trembled in its frame, the splintered edges spreading like veins, deepening with each passing second. The thing inside was coming through. Anna threw herself against the door, yanking it open with a desperate cry. She stumbled into the hallway, nearly tripping over her own feet as she ran. She didn't look back. She couldn't. But as she reached the living room, something changed. The air thickened again, and a deep, resonant sound filled the apartment. A low, guttural whisper, inhuman, reverberating through the walls. It was speaking, not in words, in something older, something wrong. Anna slapped her hands over her ears, but the sound burrowed into her skull, vibrating through her bones. She fell to her knees, gasping, the whisper wrapping around her like tendrils of smoke. And then, silence. The air shifted. The weight lifted. The apartment settled into an unnatural stillness. Anna forced herself to look up. The bathroom door stood open behind her. The light inside flickered weakly, casting long, shifting shadows. The whisper was gone. The mirror was gone. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to her feet. Her knees wobbled as she stepped forward, hesitantly peering into the bathroom. The wall where the mirror had been was bare, smooth, untouched, as if the mirror had never been there at all. Anna's pulse pounded in her ears. It wasn't possible. The mirror had been there moments ago. It had cracked, splintered. The hands. There had been so many hands. She turned in a slow circle, heart hammering against her ribs. Everything else in the apartment was exactly as it had been. Nothing disturbed, nothing out of place. The only sign that anything had happened was the lingering chill in the air, and the whisper that still echoed faintly at the edge of her thoughts. For hours she sat in the living room, too afraid to move, too afraid to close her eyes. She didn't sleep. She didn't shower. She didn't go near the bathroom. Days passed, then a week. The fear lingered, a constant weight in the back of her mind. But nothing happened. No more whispers, no more handprints, no more mirrors. Slowly, life began to return to something like normal. She forced herself to leave the apartment, to breathe fresh air, to remind herself that the world beyond those walls still existed. She avoided her own reflection, refusing to look into the surfaces of store windows or the screens of her devices for too long. But the unease never fully faded. Something had changed. She could feel it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Anna sat in her bedroom, scrolling absently through her phone. The glow of the screen painted her face in soft, artificial light, the only illumination in the darkened room. Then, the screen flickered, just for a moment. Her reflection on the black edges of the phone shimmered, and behind her, a handprint on the wall, inside the screen. The whisper returned, and this time, it spoke her name.